course, he could probably do it right to my father's face, and my father wouldn't even know it, you know. He wouldn't even know it.
It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
Quite extraordinary.
Yes, that's what...
In Hollywood, where dreams are poured like champagne and the spotlight never dims, the line between brilliance and self-destruction can blur in a heartbeat. Fame offers its own intoxication, a rush so potent it can swallow the very people it exalts. Behind the velvet curtains and the curated glamour, alcohol has quietly shaped destinies, rewritten careers, and stolen more than one promising legacy. The bottle becomes both companion and captor, turning triumph into torment with a single pour. Tonight, we step into the shadows behind the shimmer, into the stories of stars whose struggles with addiction became part of the legend they never intended to write. This is where myth meets mortality, and where the truth waits beneath the glimmering surface. Number 1. Judy Garland. The Voice. Hollywood pushed beyond its limits. She entered Hollywood as a miracle, a young performer with a voice too powerful for her small frame. Judy Garland dazzled audiences effortlessly, yet behind the curtain she carried burdens no spotlight could hide. Her struggle with alcohol grew quietly, tethered to pressures she never asked to bear. The studio system shaped her life with unwavering control. Executives dictated her appearance, scheduled her days, and demanded stamina far beyond her youth. What audiences embraced as effortless charm was built on discipline, exhaustion, and expectations that left little room for childhood. In that environment, alcohol offered a brief pause, a small escape from the machinery around her. As Garland transitioned into adulthood, the conflict deepened. Hollywood celebrated her brilliance but required perfection she struggled to maintain. Rehearsals stretched into long nights, films overlapped, and public attention intensified. Habits formed to help her cope became dependencies, reinforced by an industry more focused on performance than on the person delivering it. The consequences grew clearer as her career progressed. Tours drained her physically, personal relationships buckled under pressure, and the struggle she carried in private began to shadow the woman audiences adored. Yet through every hardship, her talent remained undeniable. She sang with a depth and vulnerability that no turmoil could erase. Judy Garland's story lingers as both a gift and a warning, a reminder of the extraordinary beauty she shared and the hidden cost of a life shaped by constant demand. Number 2. Richard Burton. The Shakespearean Titan, consumed by excess. Richard Burton spoke with thunder, moved with elegance, and lived with an intensity few could match. But the same fire that fueled his performances also drew him toward the bottle. His life became a collision of genius and self-destruction, each glass echoing the ache he carried within. Burton's ascent from a small Welsh mining town to global stardom was nothing short of mythic. On stage and on screen, he carried the authority of a man born to command language itself. Directors admired his discipline, audiences adored his presence, and critics marveled at the depth he delivered effortlessly. Yet behind the command of Shakespearean verse lay a restlessness he battled privately. Alcohol became a companion during long rehearsals, late-night conversations, and moments of doubt. The conflict grew as fame intensified. Public fascination with his tumultuous relationship with Elizabeth Taylor added fuel to a storm already brewing within him, turning personal struggles into public spectacle. Escalation arrived quietly but steadily. Missed opportunities, strained relationships, and wavering health marked a path shaped as much by brilliance as by excess. Still, Burton never abandoned his craft. His later performances carried the weight of a man who understood regret yet refused to be undone by it. In the end, Burton's story became a portrait of talent forged in fire and the cost of living with a flame that never dimmed. Number 3. Montgomery Clift, the matinee idol, who hurt in silence. Montgomery Clift radiated a vulnerability that broke Hollywood's mold, offering a new kind of leading man, tender, raw, achingly real. Yet the emotional depth that defined him also exposed wounds he struggled to hide. Alcohol became a quiet refuge, shadowing a brilliance that flickered behind gentle, haunted eyes. Clift's early career was marked by an authenticity that set him apart. He approached roles with an honesty that made his characters feel lived in, not performed. His sensitivity reshaped Hollywood's idea of masculinity, trading invincibility for introspection. But the pressure of maintaining such emotional transparency weighed heavily. After a devastating car accident altered his features, the internal struggle intensified. Hollywood's fixation on image made the shift even more painful, creating a rift between how he saw himself and how the world remembered him. Alcohol became a means of softening that divide. What began as a coping mechanism slowly blurred into habit. On-set challenges grew. Friends watched him battle through scenes with determination, even as the toll became increasingly visible. Despite the turmoil, his artistry continued to shine. Later performances carried a vulnerability deepened by experience, revealing layers of truth only he could access. Cliff's legacy is one of exquisite brilliance and heartbreaking fragility, a reminder that the gentlest souls often wrestle with storms the world never sees. Number 4. Errol Flynn, the swashbuckler trapped in his own legend. Errol Flynn lived as though adventure were his natural breath, daring, magnetic, unstoppable. But behind the heroic grin and effortless charm, a very different battle raged. Alcohol wove itself into his legend, shaping choices and consequences that blurred the line between the man he was and the myth he couldn't escape. Flynn's rise was meteoric. From Captain Blood to the adventures of Robin Hood, he embodied charisma with such ease that audiences believed he truly lived in perpetual motion. Hollywood embraced him as the eternal rogue, fearless, witty, endlessly captivating. But off-screen, maintaining that image required a level of energy no one could sustain. Flynn leaned into the persona the world adored, and alcohol became a companion in the ongoing performance of his own legend. What started as celebration gradually hardened into dependency. The conflict deepened as the excesses accumulated. Legal troubles, strained relationships, and health concerns exposed the cracks behind the facade. Yet Flynn continued to chase the thrill of escapism, surviving on moments of charm and daring that could no longer mask the cost. Even in decline, flashes of brilliance remained. His wit endured, his presence still carried weight, and his passion for storytelling never fully faded. Flynn's story is a reminder of how intoxicating a legend can become, and how difficult it is to step out of a character the world insists you play. Number 5. Billie Holiday, the voice that carried more pain than melody. Billie Holiday sang truth like no one before her. Fragile, soaring, utterly human. But the same depths that shaped her music also left her exposed to heartache and prejudice. Alcohol entered her life as comfort, slowly becoming a weight that followed her from stage to stage. Holiday's rise came from a place of raw survival. Nightclubs filled with smoke and shadows became her sanctuary, a place where her voice transformed suffering into art. Audiences felt every note she delivered, musicians marveled at her instinctive phrasing. Yet the environments that celebrated her also harmed her. She faced discrimination at every turn, barred from hotels, silenced by managers, and treated as a commodity rather than an artist. The conflict deepened as personal losses and constant hostility eroded her spirit. Alcohol offered fleeting escape, numbing wounds that never fully healed. As touring demands intensified, so did her reliance on the bottle, creating a cycle that bled into her performances and strained her relationships. Escalation arrived through relentless surveillance and legal battles. Authorities targeted her repeatedly, turning her vulnerability into punishment. Despite the weight of these pressures, Holiday continued to sing with gripping honesty, each performance carrying defiance and longing in equal measure. Her legacy remains inseparable from both her triumphs and her suffering, a voice shaped by pain, courage, and truth that refuses to fade. Number 6. Oliver Reed, The Tempest. Hollywood couldn't contain. Oliver Reed arrived on screen like a force of nature, bold, unpredictable, unforgettable. Yet behind the thunder of his personality lay a struggle he rarely spoke of. Alcohol became part of his persona, until the man and the myth blurred into something he couldn't fully control. Reed's early career was defined by raw power. His performances carried a physicality that set him apart, while his off-screen charisma made him a figure people couldn't ignore. Directors admired his fearlessness, and audiences were drawn to his intensity. But his public image began to merge with a drinking culture he embraced perhaps too willingly, shaping how the world perceived him. The conflict grew as this persona overshadowed the depth of his craft. Interviews became unpredictable, and appearances blurred into spectacle, gradually distancing him from opportunities that once came easily. Alcohol served as both fuel for the myth and a veil for the vulnerabilities he avoided confronting. Escalation arrived through strained relationships, shifting career paths, and increasing concerns about his health. Yet Reed remained committed to his work, delivering performances marked by sincerity and emotional weight, even when personal struggles loomed close. His final chapter, completed during the filming of Gladiator, reminded audiences of the talent that had always lived beneath the chaos. Reed's legacy remains a storm of brilliance and volatility, powerful, memorable, and deeply human. Number 7. Elizabeth Taylor, the screen goddess facing private battles. Elizabeth Taylor's beauty shaped an era, her presence bending Hollywood around her like gravity. Yet beneath the diamonds and acclaim lived a woman burdened by pain, scrutiny, and relentless expectation. Alcohol became one of the shadows she confronted quietly, revealing a vulnerability the world seldom saw. Signed to a studio as a child, Taylor grew up under a magnifying glass that never dimmed. Fame arrived early and decisively, shaping a life where public adoration coexisted with intense personal strain. Behind the camera, she endured heartbreak, illness, and pressures that chipped away at her sense of control. The conflict deepened as her private life became headline material. Each marriage, each loss, each challenge was amplified for public consumption. Alcohol entered as relief from the whirlwind, a momentary break from the demands of being a symbol rather than a person. As years progressed, the consequences of this reliance surfaced, impacting her health, her relationships, and her sense of stability. Yet Taylor refused to remain trapped. She sought help, confronting her struggles openly at a time when few celebrities did the same. Her honesty helped shift public perceptions about addiction and recovery. Reclaimed strength allowed her to redirect her influence. Her later years became defined not by turmoil, but by humanitarian work that changed countless lives. Taylor's story endures as proof that even icons carry hidden battles, and that facing them can become its own form of power. Number 8. Mickey Rourke, the fighter. Searching for himself. Mickey Rourke emerged as Hollywood's dangerous new promise, brooding, hypnotic, unlike anyone else. But the intensity that made him captivating also carried deep fractures. Alcohol became a refuge during years when fame slipped away, leaving him battling both the world and the turmoil inside himself. Rourke's early career sparkled with raw talent. His performances in films like Rumblefish and Angel Heart positioned him as a new, electrifying presence, one who brought vulnerability and volatility in equal measure. But behind that intensity lay a lifetime of emotional wounds he rarely revealed, even to those closest to him. The conflict grew as his relationship with Hollywood soured. Frustrations with the industry, combined with personal losses, ignited a spiral that pulled him further from the promise of his early years. Alcohol offered a temporary stillness, but it also clouded his path, shaping choices that distanced him from the work he once loved. During this period, Rourke turned to boxing, seeking discipline and clarity. Yet even this escape carried its own dangers. Injuries mounted, opportunities faded, and the divide between who he was and who he hoped to be widened. Still, Rourke's resilience endured. His eventual return to acting revealed the depth of a man who had weathered storms and survived them. His journey remains a portrait of damage, endurance, and the long road towards self-recognition. Number 9. Peter O'Toole, the brilliant rogue defined by excess. Peter O'Toole shimmered with wit, intelligence, and irresistible charisma. Yet his genius lived alongside a well-known appetite for excess. Alcohol didn't erase his brilliance, but it marked his journey, shaping a legacy that balanced triumph with the quiet cost of indulgence. O'Toole's breakthrough in Lawrence of Arabia transformed him into a cinematic icon almost overnight. His command of language, his sharp humor, and his magnetic presence placed him among the greats, admired for both his artistry and his unmistakable charm. But the whirlwind of fame arrived with its own temptations and lingering uncertainties. The conflict grew from the persona he cultivated, rebellious, fearless, and endlessly entertaining. Alcohol became a steady companion, feeding the myth while quietly draining the man behind it. Friends and colleagues marveled at his brilliance even on difficult days, but the toll was increasingly evident as the years moved on. Escalation followed through health scares, halted productions, and a reputation that sometimes overshadowed his abilities. Yet O'Toole never surrendered to decline. He returned to the stage and screen repeatedly, delivering performances filled with depth, precision, and the unmistakable spark that defined his career. In the end, his story remains a blend of genius and excess, proof that brilliance can coexist with fragility, and that even the brightest stars cast shadows that linger long after the applause fades into memory. Number 10. John Belushi, the comet who burned too brightly. John Belushi burst into fame with an energy that felt electric, chaotic, hilarious, impossible to contain. But behind the uproarious humor lived a deeply vulnerable soul. Alcohol became one part of a larger struggle he hid behind laughter, masking a storm he couldn't outrun. Belushi's ascent began on the stages of comedy clubs and exploded with Saturday Night Live. His physicality, timing, and wild, unpredictable presence made him a phenomenon. Films like Animal House cemented his status as a comedic powerhouse, one capable of commanding a room with little more than a glance or gesture. Yet the conflict stemmed from the demands of living up to that persona. The pressure to be endlessly funny, endlessly energetic, left little space for rest. Alcohol became a companion during long nights of writing, performing, and coping with insecurities he often concealed behind bravado and rapid-fire humor. As success amplified, so did the complications. Friends watched as his struggles deepened, the line between performance and reality becoming painfully blurred. The world saw brilliance. Those close to him saw a man fighting battles he rarely voiced or fully understood. Belushi's death became one of Hollywood's most sobering tragedies, a stark reminder of how talent and turmoil can collide with devastating force. His legacy endures not only through laughter, but through the lessons left behind in his absence. In Hollywood, every spotlight casts a shadow, and every legend carries a cost. These stories reveal that fame, for all its glow, does not quiet the struggles beneath the surface. Behind each unforgettable performance lived people navigating pressure, expectation, and the weight of their own vulnerabilities. Their battles with alcohol were not scandals but signals of deeper pain, human stories shaped by triumph and turmoil. What endures is not only the hardship they faced, but the artistry they shared, the emotion they brought to the world, and the reminders they left about compassion for those who seem invincible. If this journey spoke to you, leave a like to support the work, and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more cinematic explorations into the lives behind the legends, consider subscribing. In the end, every star shines with both brilliance and fragility, and it's in that contrast that their humanity lives on.